Bangladeshi illegal immigration has long been a sensitive issue in India. We asked people how big is the problem and what should be done. Here is what they had to say.
I am from Tripura, and many people might be aware that Tripura and Assam both are at the same pedestrian. A huge influx of immigration. In fact, Tripura is a state where the indigenous people, who were supposed to be the majority, are the minority in their own state. The reason being that it started from 1947 itself, when India got independence. At that time, it was East Pakistan. People slowly coming, and when there was some riots back in 1948 or 47, and at that time Tripura was a princely state, so they have given shelter to those in Tripura, and through that they keep on coming more and more, and the main refugee influx happened in during the liberation war of Bangladesh by 1971. I presume, if I'm not wrong with the year. um, a lot of people came at that time because of the situation that were prevailing in Bangladesh, especially the Hindu population.
This is a very pressing issue which has been very prevalent in Assamese politics since time immemorial. What is important to take into view is that it's not just a political issue, it's an economic issue, a socio-economic issue, as well as an ecological issue as well.
Well, it's a very defining question, especially in the context of Assam, because it is one of the most burning issues in Assam, the issue of immigration. If you know the history of Assam, the whole, especially if you go back to the 70s and 80s, then you will see that the whole history of Assam has been like swamped with this question of immigration. So basically the question or the conflict of immigration arises in context of Assam with the huge influx of immigrants, especially from the present day Bangladesh, or before like that East Bengal, before the partition or before the independence of India. So that's where, from that point of time, it is considered that after that, and even during the 1920s, 1930s and post that period, a huge amount of immigrants have entered Assam from that those particular regions. So those are the main points of conflict. However, if you look at the history, the whole history of Assam's whole history has always been a history of heterogeneity or immigration, because people as latest as like people during the tea plantations by British, people from the mainland, the heartland of India, maybe Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Bihar, they came to Assam and they settled down as tea tribes, and those are considered kind of indigenous people in India. So main point of conflict in Assam's structure comes because there is always a kind of literary and cultural conflict with the people, immigrants who have come from Bangladesh later on, and with the indigenous citizens of Assam. So that's where the immigration problem of Assam lies.
I think it's very important to understand the dichotomy that lies in the CA protests. The mainland people saw this as a very unconstitutional amendment to the constitution, because it sort of expelled some of the faiths, people from belonging to that faith, from coming into India solely on the basis of their faith. But what is important to note that it's a case of exception when it comes to protests which were mainly held in the northeast, because the main concern of the people was primarily economic and political. That the said illegal immigrants are coming. They are sort of encroaching upon jobs and basic political rights, which has been sort of stripped off from the indigenous, won't say indigenous population, but like the people who've been claiming that it's their land and everything. So it's very important to realize that religion here is not really the primary factor driving the protests here. It's basically thoda sa economic and mostly political.
The census report of 1971, 70% of the state's population was the indigenous people, and the latest census that we have, 2011, it reversed. 70% are the indigenous Bengali, and the 30% are the indigenous people. So this is how the indigenous people of Tripura have become a minority in their own state now. So it's a big issue.
An issue crops up on every election that's there. I'm from West Bengal, so yeah, people, or I would say the parties use it for their advantage. Some say in opposite, some say in favor of it. But yeah, it is an issue, at least when it comes to proper gender.
According to the Assam Accord, which was signed in 1984, drawn between the Assamese Student Union and Rajiv Gandhi, the then Prime Minister of that time, basically the people who came before the Bangladesh-India war, 1971, they are considered as the illegal immigrants, and there's a national registration. I'm forgetting the full form of NRC, which denotes like, okay, so these people, they have, like their ancestors have been in this land pre the Bangladesh India war era, so they are the citizens of India. But people who come after that are by default denoted as like the illegal immigrants.
Professionals, I would say. I mean, the technical requirements of job, for example, that like doctor, like healthcare, education, I do not think they are a competition in that area. However, when it comes to daily wage working situation, they are eating up some of the jobs for the lowest rungs of the society, at least in my state.
Illegal immigration has been a very critical issue since from the time immemorial. And for any native and the indigenous society, it becomes a threat, direct or indirect, be it the culture, the society, and from the community's perspective. And with regard to Arunachal, I see it as a challenge, not as a threat, but it's a challenge for the people of Arunachal Pradesh to actually understand that how to tackle and how to manage the differences between the migration and illegal immigration, because we have migrations since from the time after independence. But when it comes to illegal migration, we should actually consider it as in a very careful and considerable manner, in such a manner that it does not pose any threat to our existence, to our identity, and to our culture.
When it comes to socio-economic issues, Assamese people have always been feeling that jobs that are really, the jobs are being stolen away from them in a sense because of this illegal migration that has been happening into their lands. There has been talks about work permits, but then again, such a motive, in order for that motive to actually come into legislation or execution, it's very hard, because again the same population has also been used as a buffer for political gains. There are various parties in Assam that want that population to sort of maximize or multiply in the same region, because only for the sake of vote. So in a way, that population has also been treated as a vote bank sort of a milieu. So now the current undercurrents which are brewing in Assam, they are very different from the ones that were brewing in the past. It was more of a sort of like an economic issue. Now it's also the rise of certain parties and regional parties, which has given a sort of religious aspect to it. There's more of this nationalist jingoism that is like gaining prevalence in Assam. So with that, there has been quick rise of xenophobia and Islamophobia that I would also like to, pinpoint, which has led to sort of like a lot of genocides that have actually, or massacres that have actually taken, part in the history, like the Nelly massacre of the 80s and other such massacres. What is important to realize is that this is something which should not be given with the hands of the people. This has to be taken up correctly with the the sort of like the legislation and the executions of both the nations. Otherwise, God forbid, we might be having another massacre just in the name of religion or economic issues.
So illegal immigration in West Bengal, I mean, with the porosity of the borders, there comes a lot of problems. So one thing is that the illegal immigration. Illegal immigration primarily started from 1971, when a large population of people migrated from East Pakistan to erstwhile West Bengal. So I feel that it is quite of an issue with rising unemployment and the lack of resources.
Do not consider myself an expert in this situation, to be honest, because I'm not the person who has been affected by it as a first-hand experience kind of way. However, I mean, some sort of legal steps should be taken in order to decide their space or their particular place in this situation, because at the end of the day they have come from somewhere else, so they are kind of taking up someone else's rightful space. So it would actually help them as well in order to justify their situation.
Arunachal, if you will say broadly, the people who are here without the authorized legal mechanism like proper ILP, not proper documentation, especially considering looking from the broader perspective, I will say the illegal Bangladeshi are here the major illegal immigrations in the state. Like we can witness it all over the state, in every part and parcel of the state, in every corner, especially the bordering areas concerned.
Thirdly, what is mostly important to realize is that it's also an ecological issue because of the sort of environmental degradation that has been happening in Bangladesh. That is what has led to the people to come into the parched lands of Assam. So this is also environmental and ecological issue that should be taken into purview. And accordingly, I would say if you take all of these things in an amalgamation and then maybe sort of like set forth policies, I think that would be the betterment of not just the illegal immigrants but also the Assamese.
The main reasons could be the communalism that is existing in Bangladesh. So the population which is migrating, they are primarily facing a lot of subjugation at the hands of the Muslims in Bangladesh. So they are deprived, they are subjugated. So at some point they seek to migrate. Why would people migrate if there is no need? There is no need. People don't leave their homes willingly. So that is one reason.
After the very detailed and very prolonged Assam movement or Assam revolution in 1986, as I can remember, or 85, 86, the Assam Accord was undertaken in order to ensure the rights and the cultural ethos of Assam. And it was promised that various steps such as like identification of illegal immigrants, their detection and deportation, and building the whole fencing or like covering the whole border areas with effective measures. Those were the measures promised, but not entirety of them have been fulfilled, and that is the reason why even in 2025 we are getting influx of illegal immigrants from those areas. So to some extent some constitutional safeguards have been promised, but it has not yet been fulfilled entirely. And when I say entirely, there's a huge chunk of promises yet to be fulfilled. Yeah.
It is still happening. Until 4-5 years back, the border was very porous. There was not even fencing also. I personally have seen houses where the kitchen is in India, the bathroom is in Bangladesh. So in the name of the border, there used to be just one pillar. That was the border. And right now the fencing is there, but still they jump up the fences. You may keep on seeing on the news, BSF has caught this many people, this, that. And how about the government? The problem with India is we do not have a definitive refugee law. If you see countries like United States, it has also a refugee problem from Mexico, actually from all over the world. They're very strict with their immigration policy. We have heard in news also a few days back they have sent lots of Indians back to India who entered US illegally. But India not having a refugee law, it's up to the government whom to give refugee status, whom not to give. In case of Tibetan refugee, they have given them refugee status. They are enjoying in India. And in case of Rohingyas, they have again deported them back. So the government has a discretion right now. And you know what's the problem with discretion? With discretion comes ambiguity. And with ambiguity comes, violation of justice. And if I see from the global world, people may argue that why are you not giving the refugees? The world is a global village. Right now we are in the verge of globalization. Everyone is same. I also agree that the world, we need to globalize, but also if there is some real persecution, they should be given the refugee status. I'm not against the human rights principle, but in Bangladesh, you know, I would prefer the term illegal immigrants than refugee. Because who are refugee? There are three terms actually. Okay, if you study international law, you'll see migrant, immigrant, refugee, and one more term actually, IDPS. It is internally displaced people. So who are uh, illegal immigrants? Anyone who has crossed the border illegally. And who are refugees? If you see the definition of the United Nations Convention on this refugee law, they say that anyone who has crossed the border from one country to another country in fear of persecution. The term persecution, like in fear of their life. Now, when Bangladeshi people are coming to India, I cannot say that they are coming in fear of life. They are coming more because of a better economic opportunity or some other social factor. So obviously, if someone is coming due to some inferior persecution, we need to give them shelter. Human rights principle need not to be violated. Everyone has a right to life. Even the Constitution of India recognizes that. But my take on this is, not only one small state should take all the burden. Why all the refugees from Bangladesh should, in Tripura should take? It should be distributed equally among other states which have better resources. Tripura is already a small state with very limited resource, and in the name of serving the people, your demography should not be changed.
As I've already said, like I mean, I would like to cite some examples of some of the Assamese, people who have written books, Assamese officials who have written books like Samdang Hazarika and everyone. They have suggested that it would be better if they are given work permits, or like at least given the basic, sort of like the basic rights which are given to a normal citizen should also be given to the illegal immigrants. And with a work permit, they should be given rights as a regular citizen, because there's a lot of ambiguity surrounding rights and laws when you do not have a nationality. So, first of all, I do support like the whatever NRC and everything. I do support that there's a proper sort of identity given to people who like relegation. I think giving an identity, giving a citizenship to some sort of the population of people really helps the legislation to sort of figure out how they should be treated. Like if they are citizens, they come into the purview of the judicial system of the country. So I think the first step of the policymakers would always be to identify.
See, it's a very complex question. Many things that has been done can't be undone. Maybe we cannot send them back. Many of them have become a part and parcel of the state also. So steps that can be taken as a preventive measures, that in future such things do not occur again. And as I have talked earlier also, India do need a definitive refugee law, a law which states that who are refugee, who should be given refugee status, how it should be given, and who should not be given. Then this can be prevented. And in Tripura, for the indigenous people like me, steps can be vocal with your rights. We be more educated, because right now if you see the government offices, these are all non-indigenous people. Why? Not their fault, because it's our fault. We are not capable enough to reach that stage. So groom yourself in such a way that you are capable enough of being in a good position.
Big solution is always the identification who, because deportation or detection is something like deportation is something you cannot really handle it with. You need to consult with Bangladesh government and then discuss how to like take on those policies. But identifying who are those immigrants are the first and foremost policy. Then I think it's my personal opinion that instead of deporting them, I mean, it's a very practical, it's a very ideal solution, but not quite practical. So it will be far more possible from the government and from the citizens side to create a kind of bridge, a cultural, educational, literary bridge among the immigrants and the traditional or the indigenous people of Assam. Those are the ways it can be, like a bridge can be achieved, but it's a very big problem to be solved so soon. We need long-term solutions from it for it.
That was the public pulse on Bangladeshi illegal immigration. What's your take? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more such videos.